Hi guys, today I want to talk about The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. In this book, we are encountered with the seemingly innocent and naive Dorian, who, after a chance encounter with Lord Henry, who tells Dorian that he should just coast by on his good looks for as long as he can, and just do whatever the hell he wants. Dorian decides to make that his entire philosophy. He sleeps around, he does a bunch of drugs, he drinks himself into oblivion like pretty much every night, he kills anyone who he thinks stands in his way, as you do. And while this is all going on, Dorian has this portrait, which was created by another friend of his, Basil Howard, who has a huge crush on Dorian. Like, they're friends, but this book was used in Oscar Wilde's indecency trial for pretty damn good reason. Basil has a huge crush on Dorian, and this is unfortunately his undoing because he cannot reconcile who Dorian is with the person that he sees. And that's one of the reasons why I like this book. It was created as part of the decadence movement, art for art's sake, and the aesthetic movement, which praises beauty, but it also deconstructs beauty in the sense that Dorian's quote-unquote innocent appearance, blonde hair, blue eyes, boyish features, he looks innocent, and so everyone thinks he is innocent of some of his more heinous actions. And yeah, that's definitely not something that we as modern readers could understand. Food for thought. And the portrait, as this story goes on, it takes the ugliness that Dorian would have acquired in a conventional novel. Like, it takes on the effects of all those drugs, those alcohols, those cruel evidence of cruelty. It appears on the portrait in Dorian's place. So Dorian gets to keep looking like this innocent little schoolboy for decades as the portrait gets uglier and uglier, until one day Dorian decides that, despite the fact that he's been keeping this portrait locked in his attic for this very reason, he decides that, someone's gonna find out about this someday. And his growing paranoia gets the better of him until one day he grabs a knife and then kills the portrait, which kills him in turn. And there are two things that I really like about this book. For one, it's pretty much stated that Lord Henry is not able to practice what he preaches, so to speak. Like, for all his talk about immoral actions, he doesn't really do anything immoral throughout the novel that we see. And which kind of reminds me of those pickup artists who advise men to have as much sex with women in their 20s as possible, and meanwhile the pickup artist's only game is women who they hire to be in photographs with them. And another part that I really like about this book is the part where Dorian decides to reform. And his method of reforming is to not seduce and ruin the life of a young virgin. And then he goes back to his house thinking, I'm such a good person for not ruining this young woman's life. And then the portrait, it gets even worse. Like, it gets even uglier in his response, as if to say, bro, that ain't gonna work here. Like, and I really like that part, because it's saying that to be a good person, like, it's not enough to be just not doing bad things. Like, you have to actively do good things in order to become a good person. What I don't like about this book, which was especially apparent, like, when I read the book when I was, like, 16 or 17 instead of when I was 12, which was the first time I read it, was this book has very weird amount of anti-Semitism. Like, there is a scene where Dorian goes to this playhouse that is owned by, like, this Jewish guy, and it's like Oscar Wilde just found this list of anti-Semitic tropes and was like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. Okay, he's greedy, he's got a big nose, and oh, okay, he screws over his entire staff. Like, yep, call it a day. And it's just like, bro, I know it's the 1800s, but, like, come on. Like, I was rooting for this work. I really was. And there's also, like, another scene where Dorian goes to, like, this quote, Chinese opium den, which is a little, by modern standards. And I am willing to cut a book some slack if it's written during a certain time period, because let's face it, I'm not gonna pretend that I would be the most morally pure person and the most anti-racist person in the world if I was born in the 1800s. I would like to think that I would be, especially, but I live in the South, so I cannot say that for absolute certainty. So there are its good points and there are its bad points. I leave you, the viewer, to decide if the good outweighs the bad, and you decide to check it out. And I have with me a section of the book that I would like to read to y'all. How sad it is, murmured Dorian Gray, with his eyes still fixed upon his own portrait. How sad it is! I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful, but this picture will always remain young. It will never be older than this particular day of June. If only it were the other way around. If it were I who was to be always young, and the picture that was to grow old. For that, I would give everything. Yes, there's nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my very soul for that. And on the next page it says, I am jealous of everything whose beauty does not die. I am jealous of the portrait you have painted of me. Why should it keep what I must lose? Every moment that passes takes something from me and gives something to it. Oh, if it were only the other way. If the picture could change, and if I could be always as I am now. Why did you paint it? It will mock me someday, mock me horribly. The hot tears welled into his eyes. He tore his hand away, and, flinging himself on the divan, he buried his face in the cushions, as though he were praying. All right. Thank you, and have a nice day. And check out the link in the description if that sounds like something that would be up y'all's alley. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Hi guys. There's a part of the video where I start to nervously laugh while talking about some of the more problematic aspects of this novel, and it was my intention to bring them up in sort of a lighthearted exasperation, kind of like, come on, Oscar. I want people to read this book. I want people to experience this book like the way I experienced it when I was younger. And I don't want people to think that I was making fun of those who are offended by the way that that's how he portrayed Jewish people in this novel, which was unacceptable then and definitely unacceptable now. And I just wanted to say that I wanted to bring up the fact that while Oscar Wilde was a queer man living in the 19th century and undeniably faced some horrific treatment because of that, with his imprisonment trials and like just wasting away until he died. Like he's undeniably a victim of the prejudices of his era. But I didn't want to discount the fact that he also perpetuated some different bigoted attitudes that were considered relatively common in the era that he wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray. And I wanted to lay out those nuances for people to just take as they will and just decide for themselves if they're willing to not necessarily excuse them, but to understand that a lot of times people's attitudes are shaped by what is considered common in the era, like from the people around them, from what's on the news, and what's in popular media. And I didn't want people to go blind into the novel without knowing those facts. And I didn't want people to go blind into the novel without knowing those facts.